Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza, and it's my pleasure to bring you each week a new conversation with someone who's building something related to cloud, Kubernetes, DevOps, all of these technologies. And today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity. Uh, just a note before we start, if you like what you hear, go and check out all of our other conversations that we have. Head over to softwareplaza.com or just search for us on for YouTube. You'll find us, the Software Plaza podcast. And with that, let's get to today's conversation. I have with me Nir Valtman, who is the co-founder and CEO at Arnica. Arnica is spelled Arnica. Arnica.io is their website. And yeah, we're going to be talking about the overlap of security and security. And Arnica has been doing some really cool work around integrating AI into their platform. And today, Neer will be as well showing some stuff to us today. So quite excited to get into this conversation about just yeah, cybersecurity in an AI age. I just wanted to read the tagline of Arnica's website: pipeline-less AppSec, developer native workflows. Surface the right risk to the right owner at the right time with developer native workflows that foster collaboration, increase development velocity, and reduce overall risk. All right. With that overview, let's welcome Nir. Nir, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you. How you been?
This is great, and thanks for the invite, Twain. I mean, really excited being here.
All right, all right. Yeah, looking forward to really getting into some of the details of just stuff you're building. And, before that, just wanted to get your view, to get seeing out there in the space and, how things are shaping up in the space of security and AI. But before we get into all of that stuff, the very start, I was just wanting to know your background to get to know you a bit. So tell us a bit about your background and what led you to co-found Arnica.
So I'd say that I'm a security practitioner by any by any angle. I've been in different roles. Started with an IDF service where I did some of the IT and security stuff. Moved into consulting, did some penetration testing, application security. Interesting fact, I actually have a couple of CVEs that I reported as part of that penetration testing job. Um, and then progress to different jobs, leading application security in different companies, product companies, ended up as a CISO at some point in a company called Cabbage. And right before founding Arnica, I was a VP security in a company called Finastra, which is the third largest fintech. And one of the teams that I had was an application security team.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, I'm a builder, so I like to build stuff in the companies that I work for. It can be, different metrics, slicing and dicing the data, build some automations. And at Finastra, because it's a company that is it's a combination of M&As and you have multiple tools. I just had to build a dashboard for our scanners that prioritizes and decides kind of what needs to be fixed. Back then, there was no domain called ASPM. It was just me trying to figure out how to massage the data. And at some point, I realized that the TCO was quite high to maintain this dashboard, and because there were so many requests coming from the general managers, their teams. It was the second most viewed dashboard in the company. And at some point, I really decided that I need to figure out a solution. I need to find a solution that will not only show me risks, but actually make a lot of impact on how developers perceive security. How do we make an impact on the devs? That is not only a top-down impact that says you must do this, but actually get them to want to minimize risk or interact with security. So I did a few POCs with a few vendors back then. None of them really solved the problem as I thought it needs to be solved. And spoke with two of my friends that today are two of my co-founders. And we went through multiple interviews, interviewed a bunch of CISOs and AppSec practitioners until we figured out what needs to be solved and how it needs to be built. And that's it. And back in 2021, it was, you know, there was a lot of money on the floor in terms of venture capital, and we decided to go and raise. And luckily, we did manage to raise fairly quickly, and that's how we started. And by the way, the name Arnica, it's pretty much what you may be thinking about. It's a herb, right? It's a herb that heals the pain, which is exactly what we do.
All right, all right. Wow, neat. Nice story. Quite cool. Coming out of the pandemic, starting up, and yeah, just yeah, a lot that you shared there that was interesting that we want to get into a bit. You mentioned ASPM. Tell us a bit tell us a bit about ASPM, for us, and talk to us a bit about ASPM in practice. It, who is involved in it, and how do people practice ASPM in enterprise organizations? What do you see?
Yeah, so I think that, the way that ASPM started, it's a little bit different from what it is today, but the
What is
concept of
the full form of ASPM, application security posture management? Just
yes.
to clarify. All right, great,
Yeah, so
great.
so the application security posture management, I think it is a domain that exists today, but it merges with different other domains in application security.
Mhm.
You have, CNAP, and you have cloud posture
Great.
management, have,
Oh
different
yeah,
types of
the
domains
whole
today.
abbreviation through.
Exactly. And eventually it started from really connecting to different tools and pulling out the data and massaging it, adding some context and making a decision on prioritization, sometimes even finding the right owners to fix certain issues. But that was the extent of it. The main users of an ASPM were the security teams, right?
Okay.
And ASPM does not solve developer adoption. ASPM does not solve an early feedback to the developers. What it solves is that it takes, a million findings, trims it down by 90% and gives you 10,000. Now, who will fix those 10,000? We can talk about
Okay.
it. AI will help you fix them. But the reality is that the problem is not writing the code fix. The problem is finding the developer that is equipped to review the change that will end up in production. Right. So it all boils down to the workflows that make an impact on the devs rather than
Mhm.
just showing the results and running scanners. Which is why, by the way, I mean it's a piece of a commercial piece in here, but this is why we built an ASPM, but we offer the full ASPM for free. All scanners or correlation or all of the kind of prioritization, because we don't believe that you can make a real impact only with visibility. Call it the visibility can be free and should be free everywhere. And the moment that you really get into the nits and grits of how each engineering team operates, this is where you need more automation. That, of course, every product has its own interpretation of how it should work.
So just to clarify, did you just say that you offer all scanning tools in Arnica for free?
Yeah,
Wow, okay. That's quite a
yeah.
thing.
We run
Uh,
all scanners. We run SAST and SCA. We also do function level reachability analysis for free. We do secrets with validation of the secrets for free. We reprioritize risks. We tell you which repos are more important. Um, Infrastructure as code scanning, even identifying low package reputation. All of this is a freemium offer unlimited
Oh,
time, unlimited users, unlimited
okay.
repos. We really
Wow.
don't mind here.
That's quite an offer. How did you take such a bold step? Because it sounds like it's a lot of resources for you to actually invest and maintain, right? To offer this for free.
Yeah, so eventually we are, the way to think about Arnica is that we are Git experts. Okay, so we have kind of like an XDR company that does all of the low-level sysinternals that kind of identifies the malware. We are experts in Git, and we do the low-level Git internals to run things very effectively. Hence, the even the freemium customers don't present any significant cost compared to the premium customers that we have.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Really cool. Um, so yeah, would you say that you don't see threat detection or vulnerability detection as a big challenge, but you see more once it's detected, remediating it, that's where the real challenge is? Or would you say both are a challenge?
I'd say obviously you need to have accurate enough scanners, right? Every scanner cannot present 100% false positives because otherwise the devs won't like it, they won't appreciate it, and they will not adopt the solution, right? The way to think about risks and remediation of risks is that, and by the way, a risk can be a security risk, but it can also be an operational risk. Okay, these two can be hand-to-hand risks. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because sometimes a SQL injection can be a risk from a security standpoint, but you can also have an operational risk of something that will cause a denial of service or something that was not tested in the workflow that suddenly will create your kind of like an operational bug in the system. Uh, so this is why I'm saying risks. It's any risk. Okay. Now the main the way to think about it is first of all start with how do you make an impact on the dev? Because many risks can be prevented before they even get into your production environment. And what we have seen across our customers is a fairly immediate policy that is implemented that says zero new defects. Of course, at the minimum severity, of course, but the zero new defects policy automatically stops the bleed. Now you have a backlog, right? The backlog definitely needs a prioritization, but it doesn't need only prioritization. It needs to have ownership, and it needs to be within a workflow. And what we have seen is that finding the vulnerabilities is easy, and it's a continuous effort to improve the results because every scanner will have false positives and false negatives. So you continuously improve the results, but then the way that we build the platform is that we improve based on the developer feedback. So the more data we see, the better decisions we make with the platform. It can be based on the code risks. It can be, we'll talk about AI scanning, better AI scanning, cross-tenant and per tenant. And eventually, what we've seen with the backlog is that once you reduce certain risks and decide what you want to focus on, then you run different campaigns to reduce either risks or you can do even technical debt. It doesn't matter what it is, right? As long as there is a time slot associated to this, right?
Mhm.
And therefore, a campaign can be a C sharp, SQLize, SQL injection, something very specific. And then what we learned in the same workflow with developers is that if you create a pull request that comes from a security product, the chances that this pull request will be merged is very low. And therefore we came up with another workflow that again gets to this 100% adoption where we actually piggyback on pull requests instead of creating a pull request. By piggybacking on pull requests, to actually ensure the developers actually review this, and only then those risks are being mitigated.
Right. All right. Interesting. What do you mean by piggybacking on pull requests? So could you just explain that?
Yes. So think about it this way. Let's say that you developed now you have a repo that has maybe like a two pizza team working on, like 8, 10 devs. Okay. Now with 8, 10 devs, you may have maybe a few pull requests created every day, or maybe one every few days, right? Now, you as a center of excellence, which can be a security center of excellence or non-security center of excellence, like a DevOps team,
Mhm.
um, you want a specific vulnerability to be reduced across the company.
All right.
What you do is that you see a pull request that is being opened or updated, it doesn't matter, and you add a comment with this vulnerability into every pull request until it's fixed. Not one, every PR. And by doing so, it is picked up very quickly because developers don't want, first of all, one, to block their merges. And if they don't have any hard gates, and the meaning of a hard gate is that you cannot merge the code into production. And if they don't have hard gates, it's noticeable enough to address it after a few PRs that you see the same comment. This is how you make an impact. Um, I can tell you that in previous companies, when I did something similar, uh, we found a reduction from almost 10,000 to less than 100 in roughly a year. So
Wow.
that kind of gives you the real impact when you interact properly with the developer workflow.
Amazing. Wow. Mentioned AI scanning. Let's talk about AI because something that's been really becoming popular now is AI coding, generative AI based coding, tools like Cursor, Windsor, getting a lot of traction. What impact is that having on ASPM, and how are organizations handling the risks that come with that?
Yeah, so I think that the way to think about AI code generation today is that eventually tools like Cursor and all of the the co-pilots of the world, eventually the way that they are designed to write code, the underlying system is designed to make a workable code. That's the bottom line, right? You can prompt it from your Slack, you can prompt it from your from the website, and you can prompt it on your machine. It doesn't matter. The agents are designed to build a workable product, and because they are designed to build a workable product, they they actually look at common patterns that you have within the repo. So, for example, if you have a SQL injection in the code, and just because it's the easiest example, uh, it is very likely that you will have exactly the same problem in other places where AI generates code. Right. This is,
Mm,
and you can see multiple sources that publish that AI generated code is actually vulnerable or has vulnerabilities. Um, it's because it's not designed to write a secure code. Now, you may ask why they're not just writing in the underlying prompt, write it securely. Well, there's way more to unpack here, right? And the other way is maybe, oh, instead of writing it securely, which can go wild, you can say what not to do, right? Well, if you say a model what not to do, one, it's more expensive, and two, it will do just something else that is vulnerable. Um, so at the end of the day, you have the AI code that is generated with issues that I split them into two types of issues. One issue can be a very technical issue, something that a typical rule or static analysis rule can identify, like the injections of the world, right? Um, but if you think about how humans think versus how AI thinks when they pick up a ticket to develop, the human with product expertise already knows that, let's say that you prompted a new feature request. It already knows that, hey, this is an admin page and I'm modifying this page, and it requires a certain way to authorize the user based on these types of rules and so on and so on. Um, the agent doesn't understand it necessarily from the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the agent will repeat the same patterns, but not necessarily implement this, let's say, authorization layer. And by doing so, there is something that we call it up the stack issues. It creates up the stack issues, which are essentially issues that you need to understand them based on the meaning, not based on rules that you wrote with a scanner. Okay. Um, and and when you do this, and let's say that a human reviews this code, you also need to understand that when developers review code, this is their high intensity or high, you know, uh, high focus area. So
Right.
if you flood them with too many findings, PRs will not be merged at the pace that they need to be merged. So there's a balance that needs to be made here between rule-based findings that you identify based on AI generation and meaning-based scanning that needs to be added on top of that is very thoughtful on what you actually flag and what you don't flag.
Mm-hmm. Wow, really interesting. The rules-based versus meanings-based flagging. Uh, how do you actually uh, implement this? Like, is it through like giving the AI more context, RAG, that kind of stuff, so that you make the AI smarter over time? Or is there a different approach? How do you do this? How do you
We
approach it?
asked Cursor to come up with that. No, I'm kidding. But
Mhm.
the way that we built it, and so we have an offering, we call it Arnie. Okay?
All right.
A piece of this offering actually has an agentic scanner. And the agentic scanner works essentially in almost like a pipeline. We do run a static scanner with our own rules, and then we bring those results into our agent's fleet that runs an additional kind of fleet of scans, right? The way that we implemented this is that first of all, we have the data from previous interactions. So obviously, the more developers interact with Arnica, uh, we know better what happens there, and we bring this into the prompt. The second piece is that we have different fleets with different models that you select because sometimes you need a very cheap scan for one piece of problem and then a way more comprehensive scan with another piece of problem. So we have this selection that decides which model is picked up and when.
Mhm.
And based on this, we do two things. One is that we can create new findings that are based on the meaning that I just mentioned. But we also, because we already see the existing findings that we have in that repo, for now, it's that repo only. Um, because of that, we then can also take the findings that we already have, the existing behaviors, and also augment the findings themselves. So, for example, we can reduce a risk based on what we have seen that happened real time, and or we can increase the risk. All right. So that's just yet another way to think about prioritization. Another example that is also interesting, if you think about AI code review tools, right? It can be an AI security code review, and it can be AI code review that is not only scanning for security vulnerabilities, right? It can be Copilot and CodeRabbit and Graphite and all of these folks. Um, at the end of the day, um, all of these systems are closed systems. You don't know the prompt, but we're thinking about it a bit differently. Prompt is not a moat. And therefore, we actually opened up a piece of our prompt because obviously we need guardrails and so on, but we have a piece of our a piece of our prompt that
Mhm.
we opened up for modifications by our customers. It can be a cross-company prompt, such as, for every finding that you generate and you validate that it is a real finding, create a proof of concept code. That's an example of a prompt that you can add. But you can also do this per product because different products have different focus areas. So as an example for that would be, this product has PII handling or PCI handling of credit cards. If you see any material changes in the API that is exposed to the internet, only then add additional findings and enrich the findings with the context that it comes from an API. So obviously, by doing so, the meaning-based scanning um, is becoming way more powerful.
Okay, okay. Wow. Yeah, you explained a lot there. It's hard to kind of grasp everything. And I think that's why we probably need a tour or a demo right now to really understand all that you're saying. But it sounds very interesting, your approach. I also like that you're more open about just, giving more visibility and not building a product as a black box, at least to a great extent. That was a really interesting aspect to it. But show us Arnie in action. And by the way, how did the name Arnie come up? I mean, obviously, it sounds a bit from like Arnica, half of that, but then sounds like someone is a Terminator fan.
We are Terminator fans. We just thought about, hey, what is human enough and machinery enough and agentic enough, and we just came up with with something that may look like a Terminator. Obviously, we didn't take Terminator into the brand, but the concept, the idea, is something that we built into it. And Arnie is because it's Arnica, and we had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
we had to get a name. Um,
All right, all right.
the maybe there's one more thing that I would love to highlight on the
Mhm.
AI side, and then I think would be good to show you both sides of Arnie.
Okay.
Um, we spoke about the challenges with AI generated code, and we spoke about why you can't just tell it write codes securely, or why you can't tell it what not to write. Um,
Mm.
but what if you had like what would be an ideal world in in my opinion? An ideal world would be a world in which every time that an agent picks up a work to do, it will have an underlying some sort of a system prompt
Right.
that gives it the exact guidance
Mm-hmm.
on how to write the code securely. Ideally,
Okay.
right? I mean, in an ideal world, you would say, I want every piece of code that is written right now to be secure by default.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be like awesome if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
if that existed?
yeah. But it sounds
Uh,
like that just a small, like today it's more like we think in a small piece of code that's just isolated by itself being created. But I think you're talking about where before it's generated, the agent knows not just the piece it's writing, but it knows uh, like your stack, and it has just better understanding of your organization and your team and your stack and all of that. I don't know. Yeah, probably I'm not explaining it the best way.
yes. So in this ideal world, we would like to see an agent that the agent already has the context on the repo. Right? So think about like a cursor. Cursor already knows how the repo is built. So what you need to do is just you need to give it a small push to with additional instructions to write the code securely by default. So I will show you both areas. One is how do you actually scan any generated code, can be a human, can be AI generated code. And then we'll talk about how can we actually reduce this alert fatigue and work that developers need to do. Because if we really need to boil it down to developer versus security relationship, the devs simply want security off their back.
Yeah.
And there is a way to get security off their back
Okay.
by simply not generating vulnerabilities. And then
Mhm.
the devs don't need to work extra, the security team doesn't need to work extra, and that creates a huge productivity gain for both teams. That's
Right.
what happens when you write code securely by default, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me share my screen. I'll show you maybe two pieces of it. So I do want to show you a developer workflow that is, we'll start with something very basic. Let's say that I have a repo here. Okay, I'll just open up TRs. You can see here a repo called Saffron. And in this specific repo, I actually asked an agent multiple times. As you can see, the same title is all over. I requested Cursor with all of the latest and greatest models. I requested Copilot. Um, and I simply, let's just get into any of those. You can see that all of them have failed TRs or status checks that are failed in the pull request. The feature that I requested to develop is a simple feature that says, I have an app and just add like an allow listed domain login and allow, uh, uploading a file that proves that you have a real company. That's pretty much the story. I did not mention to build anything securely or not securely because this is a real world scenario where you create a ticket and it typically doesn't have the security requirements in there.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, you can see that there's, some commits. This case, it's, that it's Cursor that wrote that code. And you write some code and you will see, for example, that we already, in that pull request, we already detected that there is an endpoint that you exposed that is unauthenticated or unauthorized. Okay. And therefore, we identified that you have access to the database and it's unauthorized, and this is why it's a high risk. It's not just because it's an endpoint without authorization. And therefore, we came here and we also generated a fix based on what we have seen before. Okay, so there's a lot behind the scenes that happens here, but essentially in our case, it's a real-time system. We scan for those vulnerabilities and generate the fixes, not only on a pull request like here, but every single code push is also being scanned. Meaning, if you think about shifting left, like real left, and we spoke about adoption, the devs get the message the moment that Cursor generated the code before the pull request is even ready to review.
How is that? Is that through an integration in Cursor, or is that through
No,
another way?
it's an integration into GitHub. We're integrated into GitHub, Azure DevOps, GitLab, Bitbucket. We're all integrated.
Okay.
Uh, and we scan every push event, even into a branch.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give you an idea, the events that we scan are roughly 7x than other company that scans only pull requests, if you compare the amount of events that we scan.
Like,
And
could you give me some examples of the kind of events that you scan that others don't?
Yeah, we scan every single code change. So think about Cursor that implemented something that is not yet ready for a code review. We get this event real time from GitHub when it's saved to the server, right? Uh, and
Mhm.
um, and at this point, we get the event, we scan, and if there's any vulnerability in those code changes, in the code diff in technical terms, we then communicate with the developer that either authored the code or prompted the agent to author the code. We have an identity graph that maps this back
Nice.
to the dev.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. And by doing so, 78% of all issues we flag never even get to that code review stage. If you think
Okay.
about productivity gain, the security teams are essentially 4.5x more productive with this workflow compared to just flagging things on a pull request during code review.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already by itself, before even getting to AI, like the workflow itself, where you get notifications on an early stage. And by the way that you get the notifications is also unique. You get it privately in a blameless and shameless way over Slack or Teams.
Oh,
So
okay. Nice.
you give the
Nice.
dev the opportunity to fix, right,
Mm-hmm.
before it gets to a review, which is why most of the findings, the 78%, are resolved before the code review stage.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this
Right.
is just vulnerabilities, and this is just how we detect vulnerabilities.
So is this actually Arnie AI, the one you
The
mentioned?
AI piece, yes. Again,
Okay.
you can see a real-time interaction. I'm on GitHub, but you can see Arnica's bot already interacting with
Right.
with the findings and with the code, right?
Yeah.
The other way to think about it, and that's what I mentioned about the real-time or the secure by default code, is that have you heard about or maybe you did, but not the entire audience heard about this. But there is a concept that is called like cursor rules, or or Claude skills, or Copilot instructions, or essentially you can see how it looks like. It's called agents.md. This is a file that you can commit into every repo in the company, and it's just a markdown, right? Just tells the agent what to do. It is mainly used to instruct the agents on how to build the software, or maybe how to add comments on,
Mm.
kind of think about the developer's tribal knowledge is somehow
Right.
reflected here,
Yeah. Yeah.
somehow, right? And what we built in Arnie, aside from scanning in real time, we also build the capability to spoke about piggybacking on pull requests. So let me show you how it looks like.
Yeah.
To actually inject this type of file for the ecosystem. So you can see a different repo here. It's called Golden Saffron, and you can see a couple of commits here by the dev, and you can see that Arnica added a new commit. When Arnica added this new commit, you can see that we added few rule files here. Okay. We created an agents file. We created a file for
Right.
Claude, for Copilot, for Cursor. Each one of them have their own rule file
Mm-hmm.
that they respect. And
Nice.
we created we'll call it a default Arnica rule that
Okay.
has very specific requirements. And those specific requirements are focused on the following. One, make sure that the code that is written by the agent is working. Because eventually that's the way, right? You need to build a workable product. So, and by doing so, there are very specific areas that we prompted to do very thoughtfully. For example, we said, hey, if you have any middleware in your stack in this repo, don't try to fix the middleware. Because if you'll try to introduce a new authentication or suddenly, enable 2FA, it's not going to work. It will break your software, right? Um, or change the hashing of the passwords. It doesn't make sense. You need to migrate the database. You need to make a lot of changes, right? So we really focus on when you do build software, if you have vulnerabilities, you need to repeat them because otherwise the software will not work. And in some areas, or sorry, in the vast majority of the rest of the areas, like access to database and so on and so on, this is where we instruct the agent exactly what to do by default. And not only that, we instruct it to write the code securely by default with specific OWASP, ASVS based uh, instructions. We also require the agents to cite every change that it took and every rule that it took from Arnica. So, for example, you can see here that we have different rules that we gave it. Like it said, hey, this is how you do API imports. This is how you do blah, 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 right? Um, in our case, when the agent starts implementing, it will say, oh, I took this instruction and I will add this rule as a comment to the code change. So how do you know that those instructions are actually working? Well, the way to know if those instructions are actually working is to see a real pull request by an agent coming after the. So if you look at the code here, you will see that I have these Claude and agents files and so on and so on. So they're here. So when the agent picked up the job and started writing code, you can actually see our knee. Here we go. Now you can see that every piece of code that is written by the agent also has a citation that says, hey, this code is actually secure by default, and this is why we implemented this check, because we need to escape values or whatever, right? So, and you will see those comments along the line of the code and where things are changed and so on. So just by doing this, most of the scans, let's say, we'll look in here, most of the scans will be green. Nothing will be identified in the pull request, which again ties back to the productivity piece. Developers are more productive, security is more productive because the code is written securely by default.
Wow.
I'll stop sharing here.
Sounds it definitely sounds too good to be true. But then you've shown us a demo and you've shown us examples, and I mean, the proof is right there in what we saw. Really fascinating. I'm curious to know about, let's say, in this utopian world that it's not anymore actually utopian because it's so, uh, achievable in this approach. When there's so much time freed up for the security team, and when developers can more confidently use, the to write code in a world like this, how is the role of security and development actually changing? What do you see happening when teams come to you and start using this and they actually see that their time is getting freed up? What kind of side effects, good or bad, do you see happening there?
I think that the role of application security and developers will change significantly. First of all, um, as of today, developers spend roughly 15% of their time on code reviews. In this
Hmm.
utopian world in which you can actually trust the agents to build your software reliably, can be in many meanings, to what reliable means. Um, in that world, you would expect to see developers shifting more time towards the reviews, to the code reviews, right? And then because it's high intensity piece of work, um, developers can't really review code 100% of their time. It's impossible. Cognitively, it's impossible. So they will need tools that will help them to review the code, to ship way more code, way faster, with less risks. And again, risk, security, operational, and so on. And therefore, the role of the developer will be, instead of being that type of a human in the loop role where everything needs to be reviewed by the devs, it will be more of a human outside of the loop where code reviews can happen autonomously. And if you say that it's a low risk code deployment, it will go by itself. And if it's a higher risk code deployment, it will require a developer to review this. So you will have some focus on reviews. It is very much tied to the security side because security in the traditional scanning capabilities of packages and secrets and so on, it's very deterministic, right? But when it comes to those up the stack issues that I mentioned, it will be very much aligned with the same concept of, hey, let's see if there's anything that might have been missed. and only kind of shift the security focus on rather than just showing and interacting with every finding that will be up the stack issues that they need to review rather than the traditional rule-based scanning. Because rules, well, we have instructions for the agents. They will write it based on the rules to not have vulnerabilities. Now we need to level up and focus on the reviews that are mostly meaning or mostly presenting a meaning risk to the company. Uh, um, and therefore that's where the focus would be.
Mm-hmm. Wow, interesting. Could you just give us one example of one such scenario that you've seen, a situation where, there was something that was there was a more meaningful review being done, or an issue, a more high priority issue that was caught, um, which wouldn't have otherwise been caught easily. Could you give us one example to really drive this home?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So think about it this way. Let's say that the additional context that the product team added, let's say in Arnica, is that they are, subject to GDPR and they have, privacy, requirements and so on. And one of the things that is scanned is actually an infrastructure as code that you kind of course you create a pull request. You want this code to be deployed, and suddenly you could see it deploys to US instead of to Europe. This is something that a rule. I mean, you can write a rule, but not across everything, right?
Right.
But here it's something that is very specifically stated. Hey, all of the infrastructure of this service needs to be in Europe. So the
Mm-hmm.
moment that you see that something is created with an option to deploy it outside of Europe, you raise a flag. It goes to the security review. It would be very hard to come up with a rule that says make sure that it's deployed uh, only where it's allowed from a business standpoint. Now, can you hypothetically create a rule? Yes. Would you catch all scenarios or maybe even 60% of the scenarios? No. With AI, you will likely catch the vast majority of those scenarios because it's so dynamic that, it can be a Terraform, can be like how do you scan CDK that is a JavaScript? And how do you know that it actually goes to the right place? Um, that's the thought process behind this, right? It's that you can add custom capabilities of what you care about, business requirements, and those will be added to the context of the scanning.
Really interesting. Yeah, with that, we come to the end of our conversation. I'd just like to get a closing comment from you on, as you look ahead to the next year or so, what do you see that's going to matter in this space? Do you have your eyes on? What are you reading up on? Tell us about what's on your mind for the next year.
In my mind, I see essentially two markets that are evolving and will likely have a lot of overlap between them. One market is going to be the application security market. The other market is really I think about it as the AI code review market. There are
Mm-hmm.
different types of products. Some of them review bugs, some of them review vulnerabilities. Um, and I think that what will happen in the market is that there will be an additional round of consolidation between the tools and the capabilities.
Okay.
And because the main reason is that, when you do AI code reviews, you really win the heart of the developers. And when you are in application security, you sell to a different persona, maybe not to the VP of engineering, you sell it to the CISO or the head of AppSec. But
Mm-hmm.
the real impact is made again by winning the heart of the devs. And because there is a competition on the heart of the devs, I just see that this will need to be merged at some point. And since everyone talks today about productivity gains for the developers and kind of making their life easier when it comes to software development, everyone are trying to solve this, right?
Wow.
And this is why I see this merging and coming into like it's really exciting for me to see where each domain goes, but I just believe that it will consolidate at some point.
Wow, interesting, the heart of the developer. And great to see that Anika is positioned, I think, to really capitalize on both of those trends, AppSec as well as the AI coding tools. Really interesting conversation. That was really engaging, very insightful. A lot of ideas that you shared there that I haven't heard of before. I really loved how you described the ideal world of how development with AI should work and how security reviews should work. I thought that was quite new and something I haven't heard before. And I like how you even just showed it in action, not just saying this is someday, but it seemed so like it's here. This is it when you demoed it. That was quite powerful. So yeah, congrats on just launching Ani AI and great job with all the traction you've got so far with Arnica. Wish you the best and definitely come back and tell us when you launch something big.
Yeah, would love to. And thanks so much for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I think that the questions were on point. So that's great.
Great, all right, awesome. Uh, we hope you guys enjoyed listening to this and viewing this. If you'd like to know more, head over to arnica.io or just head over to LinkedIn or Twitter and get in touch with Nir and his team if you want to know more about what they're up to. I thought it was a fascinating conversation, so you should definitely continue it with them. And with that, we'll see you on the next episode where we'll be talking about something similar within the space of cloud native computing. See you on that one. Take care. Bye bye.